Boker Tov, today's daf is the last daf in Horios, the last daf, which is Daf Yomi, and we'll start where we left off yesterday on Yud Gimel Beis at the first of the wide lines. Tana Rabbanan, first of the wide lines on Yud Gimel Beis. Shanasi Nichnas, when the president, the king, actually comes in. All right, when he comes in, then everybody everybody stands up. They don't sit down at Shiomer Lehem Shvu until they say sit down, be seated. Which is, you see, has become the custom in a lot of secular places also, right? That's always been the king. Everybody stands up until he says, please be seated, right? Av Bezdin, the Av Bezdin was like the second in command in terms of the honor. Nichnas, when he comes in, Oslo Shura, Achas Mikan, Achas, Vishor Achas Mikan. Not the whole assembly stands up, but rather one row on one side, one row on the other side. They give him less kavod. Now we'll see. This was instituted. We'll see by Rav Shapiro these rules until he sits down. In other words, when the king comes in, or the nasi, if you call him the president of the, could be the nasi we're speaking about here is not the nasi that we talk about with the king that we talked about before bringing a carbon, but rather the president, meaning the head of all the yeshiva, the very head. Then the Av Bezdin comes in, he's like the second in command, and they stand a little bit for him, a row on either side. Shechacham nichnas, when the posek, so to speak, the Talmud Chacham, when he comes in, he's like third in line, then then they do what we do. That, as he walks by, you stand up, and as soon as he passes by, you sit down, one at a time. Let's say the sons of the Chacham and other Talmid Chacham are there. If everybody needs them, they're important people. People need them to paskin shaylas. Mafsiyan al Rashayam. They're allowed to trample on the heads of the people. What do we mean by that? They used to sit on the floor. They didn't have benches for everybody, so people would sit on the floor. So if the rabbi came in and went up to the podium, it would look like he was stomping on the people's heads because he was walking through the people there. So if the people need these Talmid Chachamim and these sons of Chachamim, then they're allowed to go in there. Yotza Litzarach. Now let's say one of them went out, left the base matters Litzarach. He had to go to the bathroom. Happens, right? They have a long session. You go to the bathroom. Then Yikanes V'yeshim Kom. He can come back in. If he had to go to the bathroom, he can come back in the same way, even though it's sort of a discomfort for the people who he's walking through, but you're allowed to do that. We'll see. The sons of the Timcha, not the Talmid Chacham, but the sons of the Talmid Chachamim. In other words, we said B'nei Chachamim, the Talmid Chachamim. If people need them, they can have those rules. B'nei Talmid Chachamim shemamunim aviyam parnas al-tzibur, who they themselves aren't necessarily such Talmid Chachamim, but they're the sons of their fathers who are leaders of the tzibur. Bisman sheish lehem das lishmo. If they can understand the shiur that's being given over, nechnasim yoshmol fevim, they can sit in front of their fathers. They have that right. The sons of the leaders can sit in front of their fathers, with their backs towards the people. They're facing the people giving the shiur, and they could sit that way. If they don't understand it, not Talmid Chacham to understand, they can come and sit in front of their fathers, but they face the people. There's no point in them facing the teachers, the leaders, whoever's giving the shiur, because they don't understand that much anyway. Maybe they're young, whatever. They face the people. Rabbi Lazar Tzadok Omer, after Beis HaMishta, even at a feast where there's a simcha involved, an erusin or bar mitzvah or something, osam snifim, they also are like attachments or branches to their fathers. In other words, they're given kavod there too, and they could sit up front. Like you see that they let the children of the rabbi sit up front. Amar Mar. He said before we analyzed it, said Yatzol Tzarch Nichnas V'Yoshiv Komo. We said that if he had to go out after they came in, they had to go out to the bathroom, they can come in the same way and walk through the people and sit in their place. That's only if they went out to urinate. But if they went out to defecate, they had number two, they had to go out that way. We don't let them come back in. They should have gone to the bathroom before. Okay, they should have gone before. Urination can happen at any time. But cleansing themselves out with number two, they should have done that for. A person should always teach himself, should be accustomed to get early in the morning and do late at night. In other words, to go to the bathroom early in the morning and late at night, so you shouldn't have to go too far, because in those days they didn't have bathrooms all over the place. And if a person had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the day and expose himself, he had to go far away, like not like the cab drivers do here, right on the side of the road. They had to go far away into the trees somewhere where nobody would see them. So don't embarrass yourself. Make sure you go to the bathroom early or late. And therefore, it's like, so to speak, his opinion was it was his own fault for having to go to the bathroom in the middle of the Shiur. Marava, or some have a different girsa here, that it's not Marava, but it's Logasin, but the sheet is Ha'idna Bismanazeh, the Chol Shama, people are weaker. They can't always determine when they're going to have to go to the bathroom. I feel Dolam Nami, even if they had to leave to go to the bathroom for number 2, they could also come back in. Reb Lozer Reb Tzadok Omer, After Beis Mishta Osim Osam Snifim, said that even in where there's a feast, where there's a simcha, the children can also become attachments to their parents and sit in front. Amrava b'chay aviyim, only when their father was alive. Ubifnei aviyim, it's not enough when their father's alive. Only if their father is there, not if their father's not present. Amar Yochanan. Now, this whole idea that we started off by saying the brisa that said that when the nasi comes in, whether he's the king or whether he is the head of the academy, the chief rabbi, the chief Rosh Yeshiva, whatever you want to call him, those rules that when he comes in, everybody stands up. When the skan or the Av Bezin comes in, a row on either side stands up. When the Chacham comes in, he's the Talmud Chacham, then each person stands up and sits down as soon as he leaves. In the days of Shmuel, this brisa was taught. Why? Right? What Shmuel Nasi, he was the president. Let's say he was the Nasi. Rav Meir was the Chacham, third in line. Rav Nassan was the Av Bezin, second in line. Rav Shmuel Hassam, when he was there, when he would come in, everybody would stand up. Everybody would stand up, give him cover. But also, Rav Meir, who was the Chacham, and Rav Nassan, who was the Av Bezin, they would also stand up. So they would also stand up from in front of them. In other words, when all 3 rabbis came in, they all gave him the same cover. Shouldn't there be a difference? In other words, we should show respect. He wasn't doing this out of gaiva. He was doing this because he had to have proper respect for Torah. If he was the chief Rosh Yeshiva, you got to give him more kavod than the second and third in command. So he said, shouldn't there be a difference? So he instituted this brisa, which said that for the Rosh Yeshiva, so to speak, for the Nasi, everybody stands up. For the Av Bezdin, 2 rows stand up. And for the Chacham, only each person stands up as he walks by. Rav Meir Rav Nassan must have been out collecting for the yeshiva or whatever. They weren't there that day that Rav Shmuel made that decree. They weren't there. The next day, Kiyasu, when they came in, Rav Meir and Rav Nassan came in. They saw that people didn't stand up for them the way they were used to it. That's what happens. You make a rule, not everybody's there, right? Not everybody saw the rule. Right? Amri Maihai, what's going on? So they said, well, like, what's going on? Why aren't people standing up for us in the normal way? Reb Shmuel instituted this new rule. So Rav Meir, who was the third in line, he was the Chacham, said to Rav Nassan, listen, Ana Chacham, I'm the Chacham, V'ata Bezin. That's you. Those are our titles. I'm the Chacham and you're the Bezin. Let's arrange something. Kil be done. Let's arrange something in our behalf, so to speak. We were knocked down a notch, right? Let's turn the tables around a little bit. Get done. Mind, what should we do? Namely, let's tell Rav Shmuel the Av Bezin, Gali Uktzim, can you reveal to us? Can you the Masechtas Uktzim, which is a very hard Masechta? The Leslie, he doesn't have it under his belt, meaning he doesn't know it that well. So we'll tell him, let's sit down and learn. Let's see what you have to say about Uktzim. He won't be able to keep in the low gomer since he hasn't learned that well. Namely, we'll tell him, Mi Yamalo Gruas Hashem Yashmiya Kolti Losa, the famous pasuk. Question: Who can express the mighty acts of God? Yashmiya Kol Tilaso should say all his praise. How do we darshan that? Lemi Noah Lamal Gvros Hashem. Who is capable? For who is it pleasant to say the mighty acts of Mishi Yachal Yashmiya Kol Tilaso? Somebody who can say all his praises. Since you can't say that you can't give a shiur on Uktzin, so you're not roy to be the Gvros Hashem. Meaning you so to speak, you should be deposed. Navre, and we will depose him. I'll step up a notch from Tracham to Abbez, and I'll be the second in command. Vat Nasi, and you Rav Nasi, and you'll be the Nasi. After all, you're the assistant now. You'll be next in line. Now, what happened was Shamin Rav Yaakov Bar Karshi or Bar Kodshi, some have the Girsa. Rav Yaakov actually was over there, and he heard this discussion. He heard this dialogue. When two people talk, somebody's going to hear. Amar Dilma Chas V'Shalom Asi Milso Deki Sufa Chas V'Chalila. They're going to embarrass Rav Shimon Gamliel by pointing out, showing that he doesn't know this Masechet too well, and then deposing him. Also Yosef Achuri, but he didn't want to say anything befavorish, and he didn't want to speak Lashon Hara. Also Yosef Achuri, so he went and he sat behind the upper story where Rav Shimon Gamliel lived. Rav Shimon Gamliel's upper story. Pasha, and he started to learn Uktzin. Garas V'Tana, he learned the whole Masechet and he repeated it. Garas V'Tana second time. Shimon Gamliel heard this Yaakov Arashi darshaning in Masechet Uktzin. Amar Ma'ida Kama, what's going on over here? Something going on in the base medrash. Why all of a sudden they learning Uktzin? Nobody ever learns Uktzin. I haven't learned it. Why all of a sudden they learning Uktzin? Something suspicious is going on over here. Yoav Daite, so he concentrated Vigorsa, and he learned the Masechet Uktzin himself, so he was ready. The next day, Amrulay, the two rabbis, Rav Meir and Rav Nosson, said to him, Nasi Mar v'nis Uktzin, let's come on, we're going to sit and learn Uktzin. You want to learn Uktzin with us? Teach us something. Pasach Fiyamar, and he opened up and he said, and he spoke about Uktzin. He obviously was well versed in it. Basar to Okim, after he got up from learning, Amrulay said, listen, Ilo Gamirna, had I not studied this carefully, none, you would have embarrassed me. So you were trying to embarrass me. He realized, he knew what was taking place. Obviously, he realized when it was over, when they asked him to learn Uktzin, and he had heard about it before, he knew what was going on. Pocket, he commanded, he threw them out of the base medrash. You were trying to embarrass me, threw them out of the base medrash. So what happened? So when they were outside, they weren't allowed in. Kicked out, they were kicked out. They lost their membership ticket. They were out of the base medrash. So they would write shilas. They would write on a piece of paper, on a slip, the paper. They would write down their shilas. V'shadu and threw it into the base medrash. Hasam. The have mifrik. The shilas that were answered by people in the base medrash were answered. The law mifrik, the ones that couldn't answer because Rav Meir and Rav Nosson were Talmid Chacham. They asked good questions. Kasvei Piruka, they themselves wrote the answers. V'shadu and threw them in. Amalu Rabbi Yossi said to the rabbis inside there, including Shimon Gamliel, Torah mechutz v'ana b'fnim, and the Torah's outside and we're inside. In other words, they're teaching us the Torah, but they're not inside the base medrash. Amar Shimon Gamliel, now Lena, okay, I agree. We'll let them back in. Miu, you see, you have to have rules. Miu niknesinu delonim shmaita mishmar. We're gonna find them, and in what way? That no teaching will be said in their name. Nothing is going to be said in their name, right? Not going to be said in their name. Asikul Meir, they call Rav Meir Acherim, as we found that throughout Shas Acherim Omer. That's Rav Meir. Why is it Rav Meir? Because he tried to play this shtick and he was fine. Let back into the base medrash, but we weren't going to quote him. Listen carefully, right? Rav Nosson Yeshomer, they called Rav Nosson Yeshomer. When it says Yeshomer, that's Rav Nosson. They wouldn't. He lost the title of his own name. Now. They were shown, Rav Meir and Rav Nosson were shown in their dreams. God showed them in their dreams. Zilu Faisu, Rav Shimon Gamliel. Go pacify him. Go make up. Go apologize. Rav Nosson went to apologize. Rav Meir didn't go to apologize. He said, so what? So they showed me a dream. Amar Divrei Chalomos L'Malam V'Lomaritin, like he had in the Gemara in Brachos, right? Dreams don't mean anything. Dreams, you think about something or whatever, it doesn't mean anything. The fact that they showed him in a dream says, L'malav L'Mar, it doesn't count. It's inconsequential. Okay. So Rav Nosson went to apologize. Amar Shimon Gamliel admonished him a little bit. He says, the girdle of your father, meaning your father was the Mardasra in Bavel. And his position, meaning the girdle meant his position that he I guess the clothing that he wore, or it was just an expression. Your father's position helped you get the job here. But you're going to be also Nasi based on that. I'm the Nasi. But apparently, Rav Nosson was excused. In other words, he came to apologize. Okay, but Rav Meir didn't apologize. And what name did they give to Rav Meir? Acherim. Okay, Masni like Reb Shimon Bray. Rebbe taught. Now Rebbe. Who was Rebbe? Rabbi Rav Yehuda Nasi, he was the son of Rav Shimon Gamliel. Okay. And he taught his son. He had another son, Rabbi Gamliel, that afterwards is another, the lineage went on down from there. But his son, you find many times in Shas that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi taught his son. His son was also called Shimon, like after Rabbi's father, right? Of Shimon Gamliel. So he taught his son the following thing, Bray, like this: a memra that we have in the Gemara in Bechoros. Acheir Momrim Ilay Tmura Lo Yakar. Rashi brings down the machlokas. What happened over there? Famous Gemara at the end of Bechoros that says like this. Let's say you remember when it's really talking about Meiser, right? Meiser Behema. What do you do with Meiser? If you have 10 animals that grew in the same year, as a Shiloh, what's the year? The year is, remember, the beginning of Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Hashanah for Meiser, Rosh Chodesh Elul, right? Or is it Rosh Chodesh Tishrei? Right now we're in the middle of Elul, right? Some say that that Elul is Gemeiser by itself. 10 animals born in Elul, because they're born in Elul, for sure they're in the same year. So machlokas whether Elul is from the previous year or Elul is like the next year, but Elul itself. Anyway, let's say you have 10 animals and you count them and you make it so the 10th one is Meiser, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say you made a mistake. A famous Gemara we had in many places. Yeah, let's say let's say he called the 9th one by mistake. He called that one number 10. Ulasir and he called the 10th one number 9. Ulacharasar asir, and then he called the 11th one the 10th one. They're all mukudash. They're all holy. In what sense? The 9th one you wait in its mum. The 10th one is actually Meiser, and the 11th one is Shlomim, and it says Va'osa Tmura. And as a Shlomim, it can make it Tmura. What does that mean? You're not supposed to, if you have a Kodesh animal, you're not supposed to say, well, I want to bring another one in its place. I want to bring B instead of A. But if you do, it's also Kodesh. And he says it makes it Tmura, and the Tmura could also be brought as a carbon. Okay, so what happened? Divrei Rav Meir, that's what Rav Meir says. Rav Meir says again, the 9th one is eaten as a mum, the 10th one is Meiser, the 11th one is a Shlomim, and it makes it Tmura. Rabbi Yehuda said to Rav Meir, if you understand, what is the 11th one? You say it's a Shlomim, right? It's a Shlomim and make it Tmura. But what is the 11th one is really an exchange for the 10th one, because you call the 11th one the 10th one by mistake. Tmura cannot make another Tmura. And general rule is, we learn out of Psukim, that if you have an animal A, and you want to say Kaddish animal, you want to say B is like A, okay, B is also Kaddish, and you have to bring B as a carbon if it's eligible to be brought as a carbon. But you can't make C like B, that doesn't work. He says, well, effectively number 11 is an exchange of number 10. And therefore, how can it make another Tmura? B, in other words, number 11 is really like B, and is an exchange for number 10, which is A. See, how can it make another Tmura? So Rabbi Yehuda said, Tmura. Omru Mishum Rav Meir. So they said, what was Rav Meir's answer? If it would be a Tmura, you wouldn't be able to bring it as a carbon. Why? Because the Tmura of Meiser or Bechor cannot be brought as a carbon. So out of a pasuk, it says, the Rashi brings down the pasuk, Ach Bechor Shor Kodesh Hein Kreim Etzmras Kodesh, and you learn out Meiser Evra from Havarta, Xer Shava. You learn out Meiser from Bechor. So the point is this: yes, many Tmuras. If I stop making animal Shlomim and I say B should be like A, yeah, you could bring it as a Tmur, you could bring it as a carbon. But certain Tmuras, if I have a Bechor or a Maser Behema, which are Kadosh, you can't make a Tmur out of them, right? You can't make it, doesn't make a Tmura. So Rav Meir answered Rabbi Yehuda, you say, how could the Shlomim make another Tmura? The Shlom itself is a Tmura for number 11 is a Tmura for number 10. So how can it make another Tmura? So Rav Meir answered him, if the Shlomim, the number 11, was a Tmura, then how could it be brought as a carbon at all? Because it's a Tmura for Maser. And it's a Tmura for Maser, can't be brought. You can't make a Tmura for Maser. He says, Eloi Tmura, it wouldn't be brought as a carbon at all. You can't make a Tmura. You can't make a Tmura that could be brought as a carbon out of a Maser. So if number 11 would be a Tmura, it's not a Tmura. It's just a special acha that it's a Shlomim, but it's not a Tmura for the Maser. So Reb Shimon ben Gamliel was teaching that Gemara to, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi Rebbe was teaching that Gemara to Reb Shimon, his son, and he didn't say Rav Meir said it. He said, right, the last line on the page on Yikum Leis, taught him, Acheir Momrim, Ilu Haya Tmura Lo Haya Karev, right? That's what he said. Acheir Mom, that's what Rav Meir's answer is. When Meir answered Rabbi Yehuda said, what do you mean, how could a Tmura make another Tmura? He says, no, number 11 is not a Tmura. If it would be a Tmura, how could it be brought as a carbon at all? Because if it would be a Tmura, it's a Tmura for Meiser. And for Meiser can't be brought as a carbon. Okay, so that was, he taught him that Gemara. And he said, Acher Momer. Remember, Rav Shmuel said, I'm calling Rav Meir now Acher. He's not getting his name back, right? And he didn't apologize. Amr Lo is at the top of Yadalit. Amr Lo, so Shimon the son, Rebbe's son, said to him, I don't understand. Why are you saying Acher? What's going on over here? Teach me. Me Malalo, who are these people? We're drinking their water. We're learning Torah from this memra. But we can't mention their name. What happened over here? Amr Lei, so Shmuel answered, Bnei Adam, people shebikshu lakor kvodcha, people who wanted to uproot your honor, ukvod beis avicha, because that was the honor of your ancestor. Shmuel was your grandfather. He was trying to remove our honor. Amr Lei says, Gam avasam, but the pasuk says in Kaelis, what's the difference? He's dead now, they're all gone. Gam avasam, gam sinasam, gam kinasam, their love, their hate, their jealousy, kfarav, that's gone. What's the difference now? Why can't this is years later, right? They're all gone now. Shmuel's dead, they're all gone. What's the problem? Amr Lei, ha'ayiv tamu, the enemy has perished. Another pasuk, the enemy is perished, but their swords or their desolation that they cause is here forever because he caused great embarrassment to Torah. That's only if what they did was effective. But it didn't help. In other words, they tried to depose of Shmuel, but it didn't help anyway. He caught them, right? He found out the trick, it didn't help. So then Rebbe gave in a little bit. Then he taught him Amru Mishum Rav Meir, which is the girsa we have in the Mishnah. That's what we have. First he said Acher Momrim. That Acher answered Rabbi Yehuda, Eloy Yatzmur Eloy Yakarev. Now he changed it. He says, no, Amru Mishum Rav Meir. They said in the name of Rav Meir. He quoted now Rav Meir. So they said in the name of Rav Meir, Eloy Yatzmur Eloy Yakarev. Amarav Afilu Rebbe Damasasa, even though Rebbe Yehuda was very modest, right? Tana, he said Amru Mishum. He still said Amru Shemei, even when he gave in to his son Shimon. He said Amru Shemei, Amru Meir Lom, but he didn't say Amru Meir. He didn't use that lashon. Amru Rabbi Yochanan, the first of the wide lines of Gemara. Who's better? Who's greater to be as a rabbi? Who should be our leader? Somebody who knows everything about peh. He knows he's a baki b'shas. One said no. The one who is more dialectic, one who's a bigger, ask questions, the one who's sharper, who could ask all kinds of questions. Rabbi Yosef was a baki b'shas. Rabba Okaharim was the one, he uprooted mountains, and he could ask tremendous questions. Shochel, he sent to Eretz Yisrael, Lezeman Kadam, who comes first? Shochel is Sinai out of, it's better to have a baki and shas, he knows everything. Everybody needs the owner of the wheat. In other words, we need somebody who knows everything, not somebody who could just ask good questions. Even though Rabbi Yosef was the one they sent from Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Yosef should be the leader because he's baki b'shas. He didn't want to accept the honor. He didn't accept it. And Malach Rabbah, instead he gave it up to Rabbah, who was the Oker Harim, and he let Rabbah be the rabbi, the chief, Esrim Tartnishim for 22 years. For Harim Malach, and then afterwards, after Rabbah died, then Rabbi Yosef took over. V'chol shnei the Malach Rabbah, all the years that Rabbah ruled, Rabbi Yosef afilu umnu lebeisa l'cholaf. He never even took the honor of having the cupper come to his house to draw blood. In other words, some say that he wasn't sick because of that. He never got sick. In other words, normally the leader would have the guy come to his house, but instead, Rabbi Yosef went to the cupper. Instead, he didn't take that honor. He didn't want to give himself any honor. These four rabbis, they were sitting. They needed somebody to be the leader. They said, who could ever say something and it won't be refuted, let's each say a Dvar Torah. Whoever's cannot be refuted will be the head. The Kul Ifrach, everybody's was refuted. The Abai lo Ifrach, Abai's wasn't. Chazir Rabba Labaya the Gavresha. So Rabba saw Abaya lifting his head, say, why? Nobody's asking any questions on this? Amalei said, Nachmani called Abaya by his name Nachmani. Why? Because he was brought up in the house of Rabba Bar Nachmani. In other words, he's brought up in that house, and he called him by that surname. Pasach ve'ema, come, you can start teaching, learning, because you are the head of all of us. The question was raised as this: Rav Zeir of Rabba Rachana, these two rabbis, Hayman who was greater? Rav Zeir Charif is sharper, Umakshan asks all kinds of questions, but doesn't always come out with a solution. Rabba Bar Masna Matun, he's more moderate, Umasik, but he comes up with a conclusion. Who is greater? Take who the question stands. Some say that you go with the last one, who's Matun, who's more moderate, but he comes up with an answer. Now we have the Siyam. Can I borrow your? Does he have a Siyam in there? Does he have the whole Siyam? Yeah. Let me just borrow your Gemara. This completes Seder Nezikin, and now we will get Mitzvah Kachim tomorrow. And and we'll start Kashim tomorrow, which gives us, I think, Kashim has 11 Masechtas, plus we have afterwards Taurus, which is Nida, which means that we've done 28 out of 40 Masechtas. So we have another little more than a year to finish. Halach Masechtas Horias V'Seder Nezikin, Halach Alan. Dafim Masechtas Horias V'Seder Nezikin V'Dachman, Lasashman Masechtas Horias V'Seder Nezikin Lasashman Laman Rasi. Years Hanlach Masechtas Horias V'Seder Nezikin Achalan, Dafim Masechtas Horias V'Dachalan, Lasashman Masechtas Lasashman Masechtan Rasi. Hanlach Masechtas Horias V'Seder Nezikin Achalan, Dafim Masechtas Horias V'Seder Nezikin Dachalan, Lasashman Masechtas Horias V'Seder Nezikin Lasashman Laman Rasi. Years of Nechad Neil Hein V'Senu. Shetev Rasam V'Senu Balmaz Teidim Anel Chem V'Ba. Chenem Papa Ram Papa Nachma Papa Choy Papa Mar Papa Dar Papa Raksh Papa Sur Papa Adar Papa Dar Papa Harab Nad Neil Heinu. Es Divrei Sarasam Finu Finu Israel. Pnia Kolana Nachtism Bei Israel. Kiba Nishmech Manjas Nishma. May Ava Tikmain Matzach Kilalam He Li Bim Sulchechalam An Lo Evash. Lolo Mashkef Vidacha Kibam Chisa and Brochat Noel and Pikecha. Amen 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 Salat. Modern Nacham Noel and Senu. Shasan Bechol Kenim Yosh Mes San Bechol Kenim Yosh Kuna Shan Mashkim Hey Mashkim. On Mashkim the return Mashkim Doram Tem. On Mem Hem. On Mem comes Schar Mem comes Schar. On Rasam Hem Rasam. And Rasam Chaim above him, Rasam Shach Shnema Batawal him to the Shachas, Anshet of Mirmal Yachsimim at the Bach. Put that on double speed. Here's some Nachan like changes at times Simon Seftus Harius, Senesikim, Cantus Rasum Seftus Farmachem, Simon Lil Madlam, and Lishmus Kansum Bisapiavo, Suskotana, Ram, Sam Kham Yamali Zari, Shlotam Shatarmi, P and B Zari, Visera Zari, Ad on Sky and B, the Salachatan Josefa, Shechavi, Tishmer, Lachabek Sesi to Sichacha, he be here for Yamachbis of Schaim, Archman Minas on Bismala, Oshabachabad, and I know also my Utana. Shalom. And I'm going to say, Rabbi, it's time for Lachmas, or the San Hoyas, and Payamba, Medic Hundred Shuan, Shafar, the measure for Hunters, who were Mar, 7 for Hunters, Shmai, last week, Yana, Shabbat, who must to say today. I found the high base Israel. But I love this man, but even more man. Everybody, Seder Nezikin, not a simple thing.